At my husband's birthday, my 7-year-old daughter was told to eat in another room. My mother-in-law said she wasn't real family. Then she physically pushed my little girl out the door. My husband saw everything. What he said next left his parents speechless. My name is Natalie. I'm 33 years old. And the hardest moment of my husband's birthday wasn't watching him blow out the candles. It was watching my 7-year-old daughter quietly carry her plate out of the dining room because an adult had convinced her she wasn't really part of the family. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She simply looked at me with confused little eyes and asked, "Mommy, did I do something wrong?" That question broke something inside me, because no 7-year-old should ever have to wonder whether she's welcome at her own father's birthday dinner. Technically, Lily isn't my husband's biological daughter. Her biological father passed away when she was only 18 months old. She has no memories of him, only photographs. When Lily was 4, I met Ethan. He was a pediatrician with the kindest smile I'd ever seen. We met at a charity fundraiser hosted by the Children's Hospital, where I worked as an occupational therapist. He spent nearly half the evening talking to Lily instead of trying to impress me. On the drive home, she asked, "Can we see him again?" I laughed. "Did you like him that much?" She nodded. He listened. That one sentence told me everything. Over the next year, Ethan never tried to replace Lily's father. He simply became another person who loved her. When we got married, the ceremony was small, just close family and friends. During the reception, Ethan knelt beside Lily with tears in his eyes. "I know I didn't get to be there when you were born, but if you'll let me, I'd really like to be your dad from now on." Lily threw her arms around his neck. "I already thought you were." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. A year later, Ethan officially adopted her. He never referred to her as his stepdaughter. Never. Every school form, every doctor's appointment, every introduction. "This is my daughter, Lily." That was simply who she was. At least, to him. His parents never seemed to feel the same way. My father-in-law, George, was always polite. A little distant, but polite. My mother-in-law, Carol, was different. She was never openly cruel. Not in front of Ethan. Instead, she specialized in tiny comments that could easily be dismissed if anyone challenged them. At Christmas, she'd hand gifts to the other grandchildren first, then smile awkwardly. "Oh goodness, I almost forgot Lily." At family photos, she'd sometimes say, "Let's get one with just the blood relatives." Then quickly add, "We'll take another one with everyone." When Ethan was nearby, none of those things happened. It took me almost 2 years to realize she waited until he left the room. The first time I mentioned it to him, he looked genuinely surprised. "Mom wouldn't do that." "I wish you were right. I've never seen it." "Because she makes sure you don't." He frowned. "I'll pay closer attention." For several months, nothing happened. At least nothing obvious. Then Ethan accepted a promotion at the hospital. His schedule became much busier. He often arrived late to family dinners after finishing rounds. Carol seemed to notice. Whenever Ethan wasn't present, the little comments returned. One afternoon, while Lily proudly showed everyone a drawing she'd made at school, Carol smiled thinly. "You're such a creative little girl." Then she added, "It's nice that Ethan treats you just like his own." Lily smiled innocently. "He is my dad." Carol hesitated, then replied, "Well, you know what I mean." Lily didn't. She was only 7. But I did. That evening, I asked Lily if Grandma Carol had ever said anything that made her uncomfortable. She shrugged. "Sometimes." "What does she say?" Lily looked down at her coloring book. "She says Daddy loved me enough to choose me." I smiled. "That's true." She nodded. "Then she says it's different from the cousins because they were born into the family." My heart sank. "What do you say?" "I tell her Daddy says families are made with love." I kissed the top of her head. "Your daddy is a very smart man." A few weeks later, Ethan's birthday arrived. His parents insisted on hosting dinner at their house. They invited several relatives. Ethan almost canceled because of work, but eventually managed to leave the hospital early. When we arrived, the house was already full. Children were running through the living room. Relatives laughed in the kitchen. Everything looked perfectly normal. Carol greeted Ethan with a hug. "Happy birthday." Then she turned toward Lily. "Hello, sweetheart." Her smile looked practiced. Not warm, just polite. Dinner was finally ready around 6. The dining room table had been extended to fit everyone. There were 12 chairs. I immediately noticed something strange. There were 13 guests. Carol clapped her hands together. "Oh dear. I guess we're one chair short." George looked around. "We can grab another." Before he could move, Carol shook her head. "No need." She looked directly at Lily. "Honey, why don't you eat in the sunroom?" Lily blinked. "What?" Carol smiled. as though she were offering a special treat. "We've set up a little table just for you. I want to sit with Mommy and Daddy." "I'm sure you do." Then Carol lowered her voice. "But the family table is getting crowded." I immediately stood. "Then Daniel and I will eat in the sunroom with her." Carol quickly replied, "Oh no, this dinner is for the adults." I looked around. 3 other children were already sitting at the main table. One was only 5 years old. I frowned. "They're sitting here." Carol smiled. "They're Ethan's nieces and nephews." Then she said the sentence I'll never forget. "It seems more appropriate to save these seats for his real family." The room became completely silent. Lily looked from Carol to Ethan's cousins, then to me. She whispered, "But I am his family." Carol sighed impatiently. "You know what I mean." "No," Lily whispered. "I don't." Before I could say another word, Ethan's phone rang. One of the nurses from the hospital. He stepped into the hallway to answer. Carol glanced toward the doorway to make sure he was gone, then gently but firmly placed her hand on Lily's shoulder. "Come on, we've already fixed your place." Lily didn't move. She looked at me instead, her eyes silently asking me what to do. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, Carol lightly guided her toward the sunroom door. Not violently, but clearly enough that Lily understood she wasn't being given a choice. She picked up her little plate with both hands, lowered her head, and quietly walked into the next room. The dining room stayed completely silent. No one stopped her. No one objected. No one except me. I pushed back my chair so quickly, it scraped across the hardwood floor. At that exact moment, Ethan walked back into the dining room. He smiled. "Sorry about that." Then his eyes scanned the table. His smile disappeared. He frowned, looked around once more, then asked the question that made every conversation stop. "Where's Lily?" Sometimes, the people trying hardest to exclude someone forget one important thing. The person they feared most was the one they hadn't been watching. As Ethan looked at the empty chair where his daughter should have been sitting, the room fell into complete silence. No one was ready for what he was about to say. The room went completely silent. Ethan looked around the dining table again. His eyes stopped on the empty chair beside mine. "Where's Lily?" No one answered. He looked at me. "Natalie?" I took a slow breath. "Your mother asked her to eat in the sunroom." His forehead creased. "What?" Before I could explain, Carol smiled, as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world. "We were just making room." Ethan looked confused. "For who?" "The family." He stared at her for several seconds, then quietly asked, "Is Lily not family?" Carol laughed awkwardly. "Of course she is, but the other children are your real nieces and nephews." And she hesitated. "It's different." The room became painfully quiet. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He simply asked, "Different how?" Carol looked uncomfortable. "You know what I mean?" "No, I honestly don't." She sighed. "I only meant that Lily isn't your biological child." For a moment, no one moved. No one even picked up a fork. Then Ethan slowly stood. He looked around the table at every relative, then back at his mother. "I need everyone to hear this." His voice wasn't angry. It was calm, which somehow made it even more powerful. "The day I adopted Lily, I didn't become half her father. I became her father, completely." He pointed toward the empty chair. "The only child missing from this table is my daughter, and that's because someone here decided she wasn't family enough." Carol immediately shook her head. "That's not what I meant." "It is exactly what you meant. No, you physically walked a 7-year-old little girl out of this room because you believed other children belonged here more than she did." His father finally spoke. "Son, I didn't realize." Ethan looked at him. "Neither did I." Then he turned back to Carol. "How long has this been happening?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me. I quietly said, "I tried to tell you." Ethan slowly closed his eyes, then looked around the room. "Did anyone else know?" Several relatives lowered their heads. His cousin finally spoke. "I've seen little comments before." Another aunt nodded. "I thought I was imagining it." George rubbed his forehead. "I should have noticed." Ethan looked devastated, not angry, heartbroken. Without another word, he walked into the sunroom. I followed him. Lily was sitting alone at a tiny folding table. Her birthday cake sat untouched beside her plate. She was carefully cutting her chicken into tiny pieces, trying to pretend everything was okay. When she saw Ethan, she smiled. "There you are, Daddy." He knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, who told you to eat in here?" She looked toward the dining room. "Grandma Carol." "And what did she say?" Lily hesitated, then quietly whispered, "She said the other kids should sit with your real family." Ethan's face crumbled. He wrapped both arms around her. "Lily, look at me." She looked up. "You are my real family. You always have been. You always will be." She searched his face. "Forever?" He smiled through tears. Forever. Then he stood, picked her up in his arms, and carried her back into the dining room. He didn't ask permission. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight to the table, picked up one of the dining chairs, set it beside his own, then sat Lily down. She smiled shyly. Ethan looked around the room. If another chair is needed, I'll stand. But my daughter eats beside me. No exceptions. Nobody argued. George quietly disappeared into the garage. Less than a minute later, he returned carrying another dining chair. He placed it at the table. I'm sorry. I should have done this from the beginning. Ethan nodded once. Thank you. Carol looked stunned. You can't seriously be blaming me. Ethan turned toward her. I'm not blaming you. I'm holding you responsible. She folded her arms. I've welcomed that little girl into this family. He gently interrupted. No. You welcomed her when it was convenient. But the first time seating became limited. You showed everyone exactly how you really felt. Tears filled Carol's eyes. I never meant to hurt her. Lily quietly spoke before anyone else could. You did. Every adult at the table turned toward her. She wasn't crying. She simply looked confused. I thought you loved me. Carol covered her mouth. For the first time all evening, she had no answer. Ethan slowly stood again. We're leaving. Mom, no. Carol reached toward him. Please don't. He gently shook his head. My birthday isn't ruined because dinner went wrong. It's ruined because my daughter spent 10 minutes believing she wasn't enough. He looked around the room. I won't let that happen again. He took my hand, then Lily's, and together, we walked out. Epilogue. Soft piano becomes lighter, carrying healing instead of hurt. It's been almost 3 years since Ethan's birthday. Lily is 10 now. She still calls Ethan Dad, and every single time she does, he smiles. A few months after that dinner, Carol asked if she could meet with us. She apologized, not with excuses, not by saying she was misunderstood. She looked directly at Lily and said, I treated you differently. I was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me today, but I hope one day you'll believe that I'm trying to become a better grandmother. Lily looked at Ethan. He smiled gently. It's your choice. Lily quietly walked over and hugged her. It wasn't a magical moment where everything became perfect. Trust takes time, especially for children, but it was a beginning. George also changed. He became the grandfather Lily had always deserved. He never again referred to her as anything other than his granddaughter. Every birthday, every recital, every school play, he was there, always. My thoughts. Looking back, the most important moment that day wasn't when my mother-in-law apologized. It wasn't when we left the dinner. It wasn't even when everyone realized how wrong they had been. The moment that mattered most was watching my husband carry our daughter back into that dining room without hesitation. Children may not remember every conversation adults have, but they never forget who stood up for them when they felt small. That night, Lily learned something she'll carry for the rest of her life. Being a real family isn't about sharing the same DNA. It's about the people who choose you, protect you, and refuse to let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. And in that moment, my husband didn't just tell our daughter she was his. He made sure the entire family knew it too.